Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making apple pie cheesecake. Today's recipe is going to be your new favorite fall dessert. It is the perfect blend of creamy cheesecake and my personal favorite, apple pie. Now, it is a little bit of a labor of love. I won't lie, it's kind of a project, but it's totally worth it. So let's jump into it and get our ovens preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the very first thing I like to do is prepare our apple pie layer. This is going to cook on the stove top, so it's going to need to cool before we can stir it into our cheesecake batter or layer it into our cheesecake batter. So we want to get this going first. You will need 2 pounds of apples, and I really recommend Granny Smith. We are going to peel them and we're going to core them and we're going to chop them. I'll show you how. But the reason I like Granny Smith is because it's a nice, firm, tart apple. If you use another apple, like say a Red Delicious or a Macintosh, they can be too soft and mushy, and you'll taste that in your cheesecake. Also, Granny Smith is nice and tart, and this keeps the final result from being too sweet. All right, so I've peeled them. We're going to chop this into pretty small pieces. Let me show you. So I cut this super thin, and I'm going to cut it again lengthwise. And we're just going to finely chop this apple. And I like the pieces to be nice and small because if they're too large, it can sort of be an awkward texture in the cheesecake. You want these to be nice and even smaller than bite-sized. So I just want you to see here how small these pieces actually are that I'm using. They're not totally uniform, they're not totally square. This is about a 1/2 inch, this is like an 1/8 inch. They're really small pieces. And they don't all have to be exactly the same size, but they should be close. Let's go ahead and cut some more. And I do weigh my apples before peeling and cutting them. Now, as I cut the apples, I'm just going to move them right over to my saucepan right here because this is where we're going to be cooking them. All right, let's add the last of our apples. All right, we have our apples. We're also going to add 2/3 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, and just 1/8 teaspoon of table salt. All right, let's take this over to the stovetop, or in my instance, I'm going to bring the stovetop over to me. And we're going to turn our stovetop heat to medium-low. Now we're also going to stir everything together. I want to get this sugar and cinnamon all nicely incorporated with the apples. Now we're going to cook this over medium-low heat until that butter is melted, and then we'll turn up the heat just a notch, just to medium. And as you cook, you're going to notice the mixture gets juicier and juicier from the melted sugar and from the apples releasing their juices. You're also going to notice that your kitchen is going to start smelling amazing. And mine is right now. Now, cooking the apples before we put them into the cheesecake is important because I tried this recipe so many different ways, and when you don't cook the apples first, they stay too crisp and they're not super flavorful. I wanted these apples to be infused with a nice apple pie flavor, so cooking them first is just a necessary step for that. All right, now this is going to come to a simmer. You want to keep stirring it pretty frequently. That way nothing burns to the bottom of the pan. And once it's simmering, you're going to let it simmer for about 5 minutes. You want to cook this until the apples are tender. You can check that by piercing them with a fork. And you'll note that the sauce that's formed around it has thickened slightly. Now, you're not going to have a ton of liquid, but it should be enough that you should be able to see it simmering on the bottom of the pan. Let's check how our apples are doing. These to go just a little bit longer. All right, this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to turn off the stovetop and I'm going to add some vanilla extract. And this is just 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I didn't want to make this too sweet. I want that apple flavor to shine, but it does give you that nice, cozy apple pie authentic taste. And it smells so good. All right. Now, these apples, I want them to cool down pretty quickly because I want to get this show on the road. So I'm going to pour them into a separate dish. No apples left behind. So this bowl is bigger than it needs to be, and that's intentional because I wanted to give the apples a little bit of space because that's just going to help them cool down faster. Like I said, I'm ready to get to this cheesecake. So I'll stir them occasionally to help speed up the cooling process, but another thing you can do is you can also pop this in the refrigerator, which will also help speed things up. Okay, while that's cooling, we are going to make our crumble topping. Now, I did not want to do a pie crust topping on this recipe. My personal favorite apple pie is a Dutch apple pie. I have shared a video for it before. It's amazing, it's my favorite, so we are emulating that one in today's recipe. You'll need a half cup of oats. We are going to use old-fashioned oats, a third cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, which adds a nice spice flavor to the topping, and then just a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt. We'll stir these ingredients together, get everything nicely combined, break up any brown sugar clumps. And next you need 4 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. So before we add this to our crumble topping, you want to make sure the butter is no longer warm to the touch. If it is, it's gonna melt your sugar and your topping is gonna be greasy and not crumbly like it should be. So mine's nice and cool. We just drizzle this in. And you know we do not waste butter around here, so we are going to scrape out every bit of that, especially not with how much it costs these days. Now for this part, don't use a spatula or a spoon. Grab yourself a fork, and we're just going to claw together the ingredients. And I'm not stirring them because if I stir everything, I'm going to end up with a paste. I want something that's clumpy that I can sort of scatter over the cheesecake. So again, we're just tossing things together, clawing things together. All right, beautiful. We'll set this aside and we will make our crust. Lots of steps today, people. We got this. This starts like a classic graham cracker crust because we will be using 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs. However, we do deviate a little bit and I'm going to be incorporating walnuts into this recipe. This is a 1/3 cup of walnuts and we are going to break these into fine pieces. Now, if you have a nut allergy or you just don't have any walnuts or don't want to use them, then you can just omit them with no other changes to the recipe. It will just be a classic crust and it'll still be good. I like to use walnuts because my favorite apple pie uses walnuts in the topping, but I found it didn't work so well in the topping here, so I moved them to the crust. You can finally chop the nuts with a knife. I just place them in a sandwich bag and break them up with a spoon, which works great. My sister discovered this or saw it somewhere. She doesn't know, but it does a great job of breaking up the nuts, especially a soft one like walnuts. Drop these right in with the graham cracker crumbs. We're also going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 1 tablespoon of firmly packed light brown sugar. Now I'm using salted butter for the crust. I'm just using what I have on hand, but if you were using unsalted butter, you would add a pinch of salt, like 1/8 or 1/4 teaspoon in with the rest of your ingredients here. We'll get to that butter in a second, but for now we're just going to stir together these ingredients until they're well combined. So we have 7 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. Once again, after you melt it, make sure it is no longer warm to the touch before you add it to your graham cracker mixture, and always scrape your bowl because we don't waste butter. Now with this recipe, we'll stir everything together until all of those crumbs are moistened by the butter. All right, we'll be baking today's recipe in a 9-inch springform pan. Let's go ahead and add our crumbs to that. And we're going to press these evenly into the bottom and up the sides of the cheesecake. If you've been making cheesecakes with me for a while now, you know one of the best things you can do to prevent cracks is to make sure you press your cheesecake crust as high up the side of the pan as you can. This is going to help prevent cracks as the cheesecake cools. And as you can see, I like to just use a straight up and down glass to help me pack in those crumbs. This is my 3-year-old's glass, so hopefully he doesn't catch me using it. All right, beautiful. There's no need to bake the crust before we fill it. So we're just going to set it aside and we are going to make the final component for our cheesecake, and that is of course the cheesecake layers or the cheesecake batter. This is very similar to my classic cheesecake recipe, except we are going to be using 3 8-ounce bricks or 24 ounces of cream cheese. Now, do not use low-fat cream cheese and don't use the spreadable kind found in tubs. You do want this to be softened. I like to set mine out a couple hours before I make the cheesecake. Otherwise, you could end up with lumps in your cheesecake, and you don't want lumps in your cheesecake. We're also going to add 1 cup of granulated sugar. We're going to use an electric mixer to stir these 2 ingredients together until they're smooth and creamy. One thing I do want to caution you about here, make sure you keep your mixer speed on low or even medium low. Try not to whip too much air into the batter at any point. That is the biggest culprit for those cheesecakes that puff up in the oven and then deflate and crack after baking. So we're going to be pretty gentle here. Gentle while still ensuring everything is well combined. All right, let's give everything a nice scrape. I want to make sure I do have my ingredients completely incorporated and that I don't see any lumps here. Usually lumps are a result of the cream cheese just being too cold. All right, next we will add 1/2 cup of sour cream and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And again, low or medium-low speed, we'll stir everything together until everything's nicely incorporated. Now, as is the case pretty much anytime you're baking, it is ideal for all of your ingredients to be the same temperature. So I do like that sour cream to be room temperature before I add it as well. However, it's not as critical as the cream cheese being room temperature. All right, another stir. All right, and now we will add our eggs. I'm just going to use my sour cream dish because you always want to crack your eggs in a separate dish before you add them into your batter. All right, our first egg, again, not overmixing is key, especially once you're adding the eggs. So we're gonna give these a head start, lightly beat them. I once said lightly scramble them, and someone thought that meant scramble the eggs on the stovetop like you're making scrambled eggs and then add them to the cheesecake batter. So I don't want anyone to ever do that, so lightly beat them. And then we'll add the egg into the batter. We'll stir on low speed just until that egg is mostly combined. Then we'll do the next one. And there's just one more after this. I think I already said this, but you need 3 eggs total. Number 2. And our third and final egg. Now, if you prefer to use a stand mixer, you could for this recipe. Just make sure you keep the speed on low and that you are scraping the sides and bottom of the bowl periodically. Especially the bottom of the bowl, the batter tends to kind of sit there, the cream cheese will hide there and you'll end up with a lumpy cheesecake if you're not careful. Today, I'm obviously just using my electric hand mixer. All right, I'll do one final scrape of the bowl just to make sure everything is nice and uniform. And now the final step in our cheesecake apple pie process is assembling it. Just pulled my apple mixture out of the fridge. It is very, very slightly warm on the bottom. That's fine if it's a little bit warm, but you do not want it to be hot. So what we're going to do is we are going to add about half of our cheesecake batter, a little less than half of our cheesecake batter into the cheesecake pan. And now I'll use a slotted spoon to layer about half of the apple pie filling into the cheesecake. Now I use a slotted spoon because I don't want to get a lot of those juices in the cheesecake. Some is fine, but you don't want it to be a lot. So I'll take a nice spoonful and then I try to let any excess juice or liquid just kind of drain out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as I've drained off most of the excess, I'm happy. A little bit is fine, a little bit adds flavor, you just don't want a ton. And it's not going to completely cover that cheesecake layer, but I do like to try to evenly distribute the apples. It smells so good. This is seriously my favorite cheesecake. I feel like I say that every time I make a cheesecake, but this one is really good. Normally after I bake things, I try to get them out of the house after I've done all of my tasting. But this cheesecake, I could not let go and I ate almost the whole thing on my own. I'm not exactly proud of that, but it's really, really good. All right, Looking good. Now we'll layer the rest of that cheesecake over top. And I try to pour it a little bit evenly instead of just pouring it in one stream in one spot. Gently cover up those apple pieces. And we don't waste cheesecake batter any more than we waste butter, so we'll get every drop of that in there. And a lot of people will ask me if they can make cheesecakes in pie plates. You can't make a cheesecake like this in a pie plate. You need these tall sides of a springform pan. All right, now the rest of the apples go on top. And I'll make sure to link to my favorite springform pan in the description, or I'll try to remember to. Remind me if I forget. This one's actually not my favorite pan. It works great, and it's one I've recommended for years, but recently I got another one I like better, and I will show you that shortly too. All right, finally we have our crumble topping. Let's go ahead, break it up because it might have started to solidify a little bit just from sitting, and then grab it in your hands. And then I just break it up with my fingers even further as I'm scattering it over the cheesecake. This also will not cover the topping 100%. It may not, but that's fine. It's going to spread a little bit in the oven and then it will cover everything. And I'm actually a little disappointed in myself because I didn't put the crust up quite as high as I thought. So some of my cheesecake is actually touching the springform pan. That puts me at risk for cracks when it cools. So what I'm going to do is right after it comes out of the oven, I'm going to take a sharp knife. This is not a knife, but I want to just show you. And I will take that knife and I will just run it between the cheesecake and the pan. And that is going to release it from the pan, and it's going to help prevent tension as it cools, and it will help prevent cracks. But honestly, even if you get cracks, it's not the end of the world. All right, this is scattered pretty evenly, so let's head over to the oven. We're going to bake this in the center rack of our 325-degree-Fahrenheit oven for 55 to 65 minutes. When it's finished baking, you should be able to jiggle it slightly, and you'll notice it jiggles a little bit in the center, a little bit like jell-o, but the edges are set. Another thing I like to mention with cheesecakes is it's never a bad idea to place the cheesecake on a foil-lined baking pan just in case your springform pan leaks or you have any issues like maybe you've whipped too much air into your cheesecake and it's at risk of overflowing. Now I recommend letting this cool in a warmer, draft-free place. You could set it on top of your oven. That used to be a warm place for me when I had an oven that wasn't built into my wall. Now I will usually just turn off the oven, crack the door several inches, and let it sit for about an hour before removing it to let it cool completely to room temperature, and then refrigerating it for at least 6 hours before cutting into it, preferably overnight. Now I'm not going to make you wait 6 hours for me to cut into the cheesecake, so I did prepare one last night so you can see exactly how it looks. And this is the springform pan I was talking about that I really like these days. Has a nice little ridge around the side so it can catch anything that spills. Not that you should really have that problem, especially with any of my recipes, but in the past I've had enough issues with that I like this extra security. Now I always leave the springform collar on until I'm ready to serve, then I remove it and then I hang on to this and I just put it back on the cheesecake when I'm ready to pop it back in the fridge. Guys, I really love this cheesecake. I'm so excited to be sharing it with you. Got myself a nice big piece. It's gonna be my lunch today. Take a look at that. I don't know if you can see, there's that nice apple ripple in there. You've got the apples on top, but you still have a nice, smooth, creamy cheesecake. I left a little bit behind in the pan. Of course, I'm going to go back for that. No cheesecake left behind. And that is how you make my favorite and hopefully your new favorite cheesecake or cheesecake apple pie hybrid. I really hope you love this one. If you try it, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. My favorite part. It's just so perfect. I'm so happy right now. So good. Oh my gosh.